Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and I am so excited to be celebrating 10 years of meaningful conversations with you. As we step into our new primetime hour, it's such an honor to share this exciting new chapter with you. So whether you're starting your day out, headed to work, or listening from wherever you are, this hour is designed to bring you thoughtful dialogue, fresh insight, and inspiring stories so you can make every moment count. So thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive in. We're here today with special guest, Solala Towler, who's here to share with us his new book, Returning to the Source, Daoist Meditations for Rediscovering the Sacred in Everyday Life. So how can centuries-old Daoist meditation practices help us live more peaceful, meaningful lives today? Well, today's guest is here to dive into just that and to do a special meditation. Solala Towler was an editor and publisher of The Empty Vessel, the journey of Daoist philosophies and practice for over 25 years. He's the author of 14 books, some of which have been translated into Dutch, French, Italian, and Spanish. He's a founding board member and president emeritus of the National Qigong Association. So welcome to the show, Solala Towler.
Thank you very much.
My goodness, what a great honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write this?
Well, the book is, except for a few introductory chapters, it's a collection of 32 guided meditations. And I've been using these guided meditations in my classes for years. So they're very road-tested, and it was really fun to just put them together into a collection like this. And thrilled to be working with Shambhala. I've been a big fan of Shambhala for many, many years. And so far, it's been great.
Well, Shambhala does some amazing work, and I'm so delighted that we get to have this time together to talk about your book. What does returning to the source mean?
It's one of the most basic teachings of Taoism. Taoism is a 5,000-year-old tradition from China. Goes back to shamanic days, and 2,600 years ago, a guy named Lao Tzu, at least this is his title, Lao Tzu, wrote a book called the Tao Te Ching. Many people are familiar with the Tao Te Ching, and there are many other teachers, and so I've been working with the Taoist arts for about 36 years, and one of the main principles of Taoism is called returning to the source with a capital S, the source of all life. And the idea is that we come into the world, we immediately get entangled with the world. We get some time off for the first 3 or 4 years, and then we have to go to school, and then we get imprinted in a lot of different ways. And the idea with Taoism is, how can we use these practices, these principles, this lifestyle to go back to where we started, even before we started here in this fleshly life. And it's possible to do that and still live in the world. So it's not about dropping out of the world, but it's a way of using these practices and these meditations and Qigong kind of practices so that we can simplify our thought processes, simplify our life, and become more healthy, whole, happy people.
Well, that sounds like a place everyone wants to be in. One of the things that I found so fascinating in your book, you talk about meditation. What's the difference when we look at meditation and Taoism?
So, as I was mentioning earlier when we first spoke, that Taoism is very unknown much in the West. People think it's some sort of Buddhism or something, but they're two different things. Now, in Buddhism, we're meditating there. It's about stilling the mind and stopping the wild monkey mind and things like that, all really good things. And in Taoism, what's different is every practice we do, even meditation, has an energetic aspect. Qi is the vital life force that everything that is alive in the world has. People, plants, trees, mountains, rivers, stars, planets. everything is alive, everything is chi. And so even when we're doing quiet meditations, there's a chi aspect to all of them, which to me makes them more interesting.
That is more interesting. Why do you think so many people now are searching for stillness?
Well, because the world is a very crazy place right now. And, it's great that we have things like you and I get to meet here, what I call cyber Tao. And we have all these wonderful things, Wikipedia and all these things we can learn from. But it's also kind of makes our brains and our nervous systems more complicated. And I think a lot of people, they want to be able to work in the world. They want to be able to have a good time and utilize all these great tools that we now have. But they also want to find, how can I get to a place where I can let go of all that, and I can let go of my problems, and I can find a very still place, and I can actually quiet my nervous system and energize my chi system.
And when we talk about chi, we're talking about energy, right?
Yes. Vital life, everything that is alive has chi. So we do these, a lot of these meditations utilize what we call Qigong practice. Qigong, Gong is, Qi is like vital life force. Gong means to work with, or sometimes I call to play with. We're working and playing with this vital life energy, and, it's, a lot of people have, their diets are not very good, their lifestyle is not very good, they're really tired, they're exhausted, or people have serious health conditions. I had a serious health condition when I first started Qigong that cured my incurable disease. And so I really believe in this stuff, and I utilize it in my life. Every aspect of my life, I use it, including my cancer journey of a few years ago. So it's not just when you want to quiet your mind and meditate. It's how can you use this stuff in your life when you're sitting in the dentist's office going in to get your root canal and you're feeling kind of nervous, you're taking off on a plane, or you're dealing with health issues or loved ones' health issues. It's not just about being some sort of holy person sitting in a quiet place just working on themselves. It's how can we be stronger, healthier people so that we can have a good effect on those around us to maybe help them become stronger, healthier people so they can pass that effect on.
Well, I really like how in your book you ask this question, like, what can Taoism, a 5,000-year-old philosophy of ancient China, offer us at this crucial time? And I think that's such a great question because so many people are looking for maybe a way out of their problems or a way to kind of work around their problems.
Yes, yeah. And like I was just saying, we have just being in the modern world, it's kind of crazy. These practices come from thousands of years ago, an agrarian society in China. Everybody was farmers. There were cities. They were some of the biggest cities in the world in medieval China. But in Taoism, we say there are books you can read, there are practices you can do, but the best teacher of all is nature. Nature with a capital N. Just like I say source with a capital S. And we, within ourselves, are natural beings, but we become unnatural because of the way the world is working these days. And so how can we become natural beings? How can we become more balanced and more healthy emotionally, psychologically, even spiritually?
Well, and further in your book, you talk about how Taoism doesn't offer a way out, but a way through. And I like that because a lot of times we're looking for the quick fix when maybe it's something different.
Yeah, there are things, in a little while, I'll share with you guys a little meditation that you can do in the moment. But a lot of these practices, like many people are familiar with Tai Chi. I think people are familiar with that. It's a very slow moving. It's what in Taoism we call stillness within movement. It's a moving meditation. And that's a part of meditation, not just sitting, but sometimes we do just standing, sometimes lying down, sometimes moving, like Tai Chi and Qigong.
In your book, you describe Taoism as a way of living rather than simply a philosophy. What does that look like in everyday life?
Well, it for me, it looks like I get up early in the morning and I drink some green tea and I look at some of these Taoist books that I'm always studying. And then I walk and then I do Qigong practices and I eat a good diet. And when I have problems in my life, as we all do, I try to find what's the simplest, most uncomplicated way that I can deal with this. And using these principles of being flexible. One of the main principles, if not the main principle, and I talk about that in the book, is called Wu Wei, Wuwei. And if we just translate it directly, it means not doing. But what it means is not overdoing, not overextending, not forcing. If we can just live our life in that way, and along with the principle of the watercourse way, going with the flow, being flexible, not overdoing, not overeating, not overdrinking, just not even overthinking. It gives us some tools. We have a whole toolbox in Taoism of these different principles or tools.
And I know we talked about meditation earlier, and I believe that we're going to be lucky enough today for you to do a special meditation for us. Now, can anyone practice meditation regardless of their spiritual or religious backgrounds?
Yes, all these Qigong, Daoist meditation, you don't have to become a quote Daoist. You don't have to change whatever spiritual path you're on. As a matter of fact, these traditions come from thousands of years ago, and there was no religion of Taoism then. There is a Taoist religion now, but it came up about like 900 years after Tao Te Ching. But so millions of people around the world, in China and other places, are doing Qigong and Tai Chi, and they may not even think of themselves as Taoists or followers of Taoism. The main thing is to do the practices and to utilize these tools in our Taoist toolbox and be able to, have a way that we can live a balanced and joyful life.
Well, and it seems that with it being a philosophy, it's something that people have studied over years and years and years and put into practice as opposed to any kind of religious doctrine.
Yes. The kind of Qigong, there are two basic branches of Taoism. One called Tao Jia, which is often called philosophical Taoism, what I do, what I practice and teach. And then there's Tao Jiu, which is religious Taoism, where they have rituals and priests and all that stuff. So most people in the West are not as interested in that aspect of Taoism. Most people in the West, I found, people are more interested in what are the practices and what are the philosophy that will get me through troubled times and help me become healthier. Qigong is about becoming healthier, which a lot of people need.
Oh boy, do we. So, without a doubt. I mean, I think that people are so overloaded with stress, anxiety. I think loneliness is a big deal as well right now. So, being able to use a practice that helps to make you healthier, I mean, what a blessing that is.
Well, there's a meditation in here called Connecting with the Great Mother. This idea of the world, the universe, as a motherly figure, which a lot of religions even talk about goddesses, and even in Christianity we have Mary, Mother Mary, and this idea that you can connect to that compassionate, loving aspect of the universe and energetically hook up to that, so that you can feel that love, that support, that non-judgment, non-critical energy coming to you, and fill yourself with that. And you do the meditation in the book a few times, and then it's easy to, whenever you feel you need to be recharged with that, you know how to do it really quickly.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's real. It sounds like, whoa, I'm connecting to the Great Mother, but it becomes a very real thing. In Qigong, we have a saying, imagination becomes reality. So we're doing things, especially in the beginning, imagine this, or put your mind here, and that kind of thing. But after doing it for a while, it becomes very, very real.
Wow. I know so many people struggle to quiet their minds, and there's the talk
Oh,
about
sure.
like the monkey mind.
Yes.
So for before we dive into our meditation, what advice would you give to someone who can't get their mind quiet or feel like they can meditate?
Yes. Yes, the Buddhists call it the monkey mind, and that was called the wild horse of the mind. And so it's like we don't want to break the horse. We just want to tame the horse. And so part of it is what you pay attention to. And some people have the idea that to be able to meditate, you have to stop all thoughts. And that's just about impossible to do. And it's not required, actually. And the more we put our attention to, say, our breathing, we have some very special breathing practices we do. And we'll do a little bit of that when we do the meditation. And just focusing on that. And then, of course, thoughts come in. But instead of like, oh my God, I'm thinking, oh, stop the thinking. Oh, I can't think about that. And then you're thinking about, and you just like, it's like clouds going by. You might say, oh, that cloud is an interesting shape, looks like a little lamb or something. And you just let it go by and you don't worry about it. And even 10, 15 minutes of doing that can have a real effect on your life.
I would say so. I've always been you hear different practices, and I've done meditation over the years. You have to quiet the mind, and that's a struggle.
Sure.
So to get to a place where you can acknowledge the thoughts and then just come back to, in some ways, center, I think is such an
Yes.
important practice.
Well, and you see, many people in the West are familiar with Tai Chi. And that's a form of meditation, actually, but it's stillness. You're doing these movements, but you have a very still center that all the movements are coming out of and into. That's a form of meditation. Some people have a really hard time just sitting, so they do a movement meditation. And we have standing like a tree meditations. We have a lot of different tools, as I was mentioning, for anyone. Someone can find in my book and from other people's books, from my teachers. I've studied with many wonderful, wonderful teachers, and it's such a joy for me to be able to pass on what I've learned from them to others.
What a gift that is.
Yeah.
Well, I am so excited that we get to have you here to do a special meditation with us. Which meditation would you like to do? There's so many in your book that I just
Yes.
love. I'd love to hear which one you'd like to
Well,
share.
I was thinking a real good beginner one, which is a chance for us to use our imagination, is Chapter 5, Healing Light Meditation.
That sounds amazing.
Yes. Okay, so we have a lot of people are familiar for the yoga system about chakras, energy centers. And in Taoism, we just have 3 main energy centers, a little easier to memorize. They're called dantians, which means field of medicine or field of elixir. One is in our lower abdomen, behind our navel. One is in our heart center, in the middle of our chest. And one is in our third eye center, in the middle of our forehead. In this one, we're going to be working with the lower dantian. We work with the lower dantian a lot because it's like a foundation. It's like you're building a building. You build the foundation first before you start on the walls, and certainly before you start on the roof. So it's a good beginner, but it's also an advanced practice as well. So when we breathe, we're breathing in and out of our nose. Our nose is actually what's designed for breathing, much more than our mouth. We close our eyes so that we can see more clearly with our inner eye. And the one kind of funny thing is that we put the tip of our tongue to the roof of our mouth. And the reason we do that is because many people are familiar with acupuncture and how there's all these channels and pathways of qi all through our body, but there's 2 like super highways, one that goes up the back and ends at the upper palate, one that goes down the front, begins at the lower palate. So by putting our tongue there, it's like an electrical connection. The other thing is, as we're using our imagination, we are breathing into our lungs, certainly, but we imagine we're breathing all the way down into our lower dantian. And when we breathe in, our abdomen expands like a balloon to the front, the back, the sides, top and bottom, and then when we breathe out, it contracts. So that's the basic, and we use that basic breathing thing for a lot of the things we do. So we're breathing slowly, deeply, and gently. So not forcing, like I'm going to breathe so deeply, as is comfortable. And this kind of breathing has a very calming effect on our nervous system. So we'll begin with just a few breaths to kind of stabilize ourselves here in the lower dantian. So we're breathing in, our abdomen is expanding, breathing out, it's contracting, and we're filling our lungs all the way. There's an old book from 2,000 years ago called the Chuang-Tzu, and he says, people today, he's talking 2,000 years ago, people today only breathe from their throat, where the ancient masters breathed from the bottom of their feet, meaning many people only breathe from like the top half of their lungs. So they never get fully oxygenated. Also, when we breathe, when we really expand our lungs, it has a lot of effect on our blood flow and a lot of other things that happen. So we wanted to make sure we're breathing very fully. And feeling kind of like grounded. And after doing that for just a few minutes, in your mind intent, see a cloudy mist of healing golden light in front of you. This misty golden light is coming from the stars, the planets, the environmental chi. And then as we breathe in that healing golden light into our body. And anywhere in our body we have pain, disease, stress, toxicity, we feel that light going right to that place and lighting it up and healing. And then as we breathe out this pain, disease, toxicity, stress, and we see it in our mind's eye as black smoke coming out of our body and dissipating into the air in front of us. So it gives you a little more something to work with your imagination. We're inhaling the golden light and exhaling the black smoke. And if physical, emotional, psychological, even spiritual, wherever we have a block even in our energetic system, or if our kidneys and adrenals are very tired, we have a lot of fear in our life and anxiety. We bring in this golden light, which just helps to heal and strengthen all those areas. And then we are seeing it come out of our body as black smoke. And normally we would do this for, say 20 minutes. We're doing a little shorter now, but after we're doing that for a little while, we start breathing in the golden light and exhaling golden light. So no more black smoke, just bringing in the light and exhaling the light. And we don't even need to direct the healing chi, the healing light. Chi has a kind of intelligence, and it can go anywhere in our system, physically, emotionally, or even psychologically, and at least begin a healing process. And then to end the meditation, we bring our palms together and we rub our palms together briskly 36 times to warm up our palms. And And then we place our palms over our eyes and breathe in the warmth of our palms. In Chinese medicine, their point in our palms called the Lao Gong. And many cultures around the world have a tradition of hands-on healing, right? If we bump our head, the first thing we do is we put our hand on it. If we want to comfort someone, we may put our hand around their shoulder. So we're just breathing in this warm chi from our palms into our eyes and just letting it kind of bathe our eyes in this warm healing chi. Just for a few minutes. And then we very lightly rub up and down our face to bring ourselves out of the meditative state. So that's an example of the kinds of practices we do.
What a powerful practice. My goodness. You can feel the energy move. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
So can just spending a few quiet moments, because it didn't take us long to go through this meditation practice, but you could feel the benefit. Can just spending a few quiet moments each day really kind of change the way we experience life?
Yes, there's another practice we won't go through, but I'll just describe it for a moment. It's in the book. It's grounding, rooting practice, where we, using our mind's intent again, we send roots like tree roots from the bottom of our feet deep into the earth, like 3 times the length of your body. Just like trees have roots in the ground, we say, picture a tree, and you picture a trunk and limbs and branches and flowers and fruit. But underground is a whole other system. And of course, now we know that these underground roots of trees communicate with each other. But this idea that we do this practice can be done sitting, standing, and you can do this very quickly. Like when I mentioned you're in the dentist's office, or when I travel, the thing I don't like is the plane taking off. So before we take off, I send my roots deep into the earth. So when that plane goes up to 30,000 feet, I still feel connected to the earth. Or anytime you have an anxiety or something that you're dealing with difficulty, just spend a few minutes. Send those roots from the bottom of your feet down into the earth. Allow yourself to feel grounded and rooted like a tree. And once you do these practices for a little while, then you can do it very quickly.
Well, I can see how doing that grounding practice can really get us, I think, in a lot of ways, like more connected with nature, because we seem so disconnected.
Yes, we're connecting to what I call the living, breathing earth.
Just a great practice. In your book, you talk about the balance between movement and stillness. Why is that so important?
It's important. That's the one thing that Daoism rather is very different than Buddhism, is that we do a lot of movement practices, because just like animals don't just lie around all the time. They get up and move. And human beings, it's believed that if we don't move enough, or all our meditation is just sitting meditation, then our energy just doesn't get to flow and to move. And we get up and we do these movements like Tai Chi and various forms of Qigong, or just dancing, spontaneous dancing, walking. We as natural human beings need to move, and that becomes a meditation in itself. There's a chapter in here on walking meditation. You can turn your morning walk into a kind of a meditation Qigong practice.
I think when most people go for a walk, they don't even think about that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So can meditation help us navigate like uncertainty and maybe like constant change?
Yes, and I think that grounding and rooting one is a really good one for that. Because oftentimes when we are dealing with uncertainty and challenging times, our nervous system gets moving a little too quickly, and we're not thinking very clearly sometimes, and we just stop. We do that breathing into our belly. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu says, get out of your head and into your belly. Get out of your intellectual mind and start connecting with your belly. You know, when we are in utero, in our mama's belly, all our nutrition, the air that we're breathing, everything is coming through our navel, right? We're floating in a sea of amniotic fluid. And so this is a very important point. And it's like singers, opera singers know about this, you know, singing from their gut. Or nowadays, there's something called the heart math solution. A lot of research has been done that we have actually brain cells in our gut. And the more we get out of our head and into our belly, into our gut, the more grounded we will naturally feel and the more solid we will feel, and thus being able to deal with life. You know, when I was a kid, we had these big plastic clown things that would have a weight in the bottom so that when you knocked them over, they pop back up. So the more you fill your lower body with chi, when life comes along and knocks you down, instead of lying on the floor and whining, you pop back up. So it has real world. All these things is not just when we're doing our so-called spiritual practice. All these practices have real world applications. That's what I love about this stuff.
Yeah, that makes it so much more practical where people can really implement it in their daily lives.
Yeah, I think that's important.
One of the things that you talk about in your book is the concept of going with the flow, which I think so many of us have said before. I know I have. What does this really mean from a Taoist perspective?
Yes, that's one of the main tools in the Taoist toolbox called the Watercourse Way. Well, it's interesting. The Watercourse Way is about going, we call it going with the flow. We started using that term back in the 60s. But it's like finding the way of least resistance. Because sometimes in life, we feel like we come up against, it's like we're going down merrily down the stream, and we suddenly hit like a beaver dam or some kind of obstruction. And our first thought is, I don't like this. And you're trying to bash your way through it. And you're just making the situation even worse. And so the guidance is, okay, just quiet down. Allow your chi to rise, and it may take a few days, might take a long time, so that eventually the water rises above the obstruction and just flows over it. So that's one example of how to use the Watercourse Way. And also being sensitive to, what is the Watercourse Way? Well, I want to get this project done. I want to get this or that done. And something is getting in my way and it makes me very angry. And I need to find a way to bash through this somehow. And you end up just wasting a lot of chi, wasting a lot of energy, instead of saying, okay, I'll just stop for a moment, or it might take more than a moment, and just allow my energy to rise of itself, and also think about, what can I actually learn in this moment? I'm hitting an obstruction. What is the obstruction really made of? Is it a physical or an energetic or a psychological obstruction? And how can I find a way to work with it, learn something from it, perhaps, or just be quiet for a little while until your energy comes up, the water table comes up, and you're able to keep flowing merrily down to the sea, which we call source with a capital S, or what Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese, called Tao.
So then it's really easy to distinguish between when we're in situations that we're pushing against something as opposed to going with the flow.
Yeah, and sometimes going with the flow is like stopping for a little while. You know, but we think that's where Wu comes in, not overextending. You know, I want to get this project done and I'm just working, or I want to buy this new car and I'm spending way more money than I should, or, you know, trying to make something work and we're just forcing it. So we think about, oh, there's another way, the way of Wu and the way of the Watercourse Way. And, you know, we have other tools, one called Pu, which is being natural, which is which is a big deal in this modern, very unnatural culture that we live in. And being natural doesn't mean that you don't live in a house and go on Zoom calls and everything, but you are being naturally yourself. And another term is Junran, which means an authentic being. Sometimes that's translated as the perfect man, but it actually means authentic person. Ren means person, not man. Like knowing who you really are authentically and expressing yourself authentically into the world. And I think many people nowadays have no idea who they are authentically. They're who they are, or what their parents told them, or the education system, or their religion, or the political party tells them they are. Sometimes spending some time just alone with yourself and all your issues, you can learn a lot about yourself and maybe understand yourself and maybe connecting with who you are authentically.
And it has me kind of questioning. So, what if someone doesn't really know who they are authentically? How can they start that journey to uncovering that?
Well, you can buy my book or you can, learn these practices, spending some time with yourself. Spending, people go on retreats. Some people spend thousands of dollars to go to these really fancy places on retreats. But you can do a retreat in your own home, even if it's just for a weekend. Turning off the phone, not interacting with other people that you may be living with, and spending some time journaling, spending some quiet time alone, and just doing formal meditation or very informal. Wow, who am I now? How did I get to where I am right now? And how can I get to where I would like to go without spending all my money or spending all my energy or forcing my way through, and just kind of connecting with who you were maybe when you were little, when you were growing up, before people started saying, you're not allowed to do this or that or this. There's a thing, even in the Bible, this thing about being as a child. At one point in the Bible, he says, be as a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. And Daoists talk a lot about this idea of being more, not childish, which many grown-ups are, but childlike, and that way being natural and just going for a walk and just like looking at the sky and seeing those clouds or seeing a butterfly come by. The Taoists believe that we are surrounded by nature spirits, like a lot of other indigenous cultures. And one of my teachers said, sometime you be in the garden or just in your yard and a butterfly will come and land on your shoulder, and don't think that's just a butterfly, like an insect. That could be a spirit coming to give you a blessing or a teaching or just giving you an experience.
What a magical way to look at life. I love that.
Yeah, it makes it fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the things I want to dive into is breath work and what
Mhm.
role breath plays in creating a deeper connection between the mind and body.
Well, like we were doing in that little meditation, that breathing into lower dantian, that idea of breathing fully, not only when we breathe from our lungs from the bottom up, we also exercise the diaphragm muscle, which goes across your upper abdomen, which moves up and down, which massages your digestive organs. Oh, there's a lot going on in just learning how to breathe correctly. People say, well, I'm going to teach you how to breathe. And they would say, I've been breathing all my life. I know how to breathe. I'm breathing right now. But for many people, they're only breathing from, say, the middle of their chest up. And their nervous system gets tight. They're not fully oxygenating their blood and their whole system. So doing these breathing exercises, sometimes we breathe. I've been teaching a class the last year or so called Open Heart Qigong, utilizing how to open our heart center, because our heart, as we know, even from Western medicine, and the Western viewpoint is that the heart is not just a blood pump. The heart is sending electrical signals to the brain and the gut hundreds of times every day. There's a lot, then there's heart resonance. There's a lot going on besides just pumping blood. And in Chinese medicine, the organ of the heart, they say the heart is the emperor or empress of all the other organs. So how can we do these practices so that we can feel safe in our heart? We can feel open with our heart. We can lead from our heart from a place of groundedness, not just some people say, well, follow your heart. And some people do that and they get in a lot of trouble because they're not actually following their heart. They're not following it in a grounded way. They're using their brain still. And we utilize the brain. The brain is a wonderful tool, but we also want to be able to use our heart and our spirit and our chi and our breath. We have all these wonderful tools that we don't take advantage of because we weren't taught that in school, right? We were taught how to read and how to do math, but we were never taught how to breathe or how to meditate. Well, in some countries, in Japan and India, they do, but for the most part, in the Western educational system, we're not taught that. And so when you just learn some little tool like this and just focus on that for a while, don't do all 32 of these practices like one right after the other. Go to the next chapter, do the next one. Go through it, look at some of them and decide, oh, here's one that I think really speaks to me. Here's one I think would be a good thing for me to use. Here's one that sounds like fun, and then practice a few of those for a little while, for like some weeks or possibly even months. All these Qigong things in Taoism, we say they're lifelong practices. So it's not just something you do for a month or two of your life. It becomes a part of your life, like eating and sleeping and breathing. And I think it's useful. For me, I think it's from Shakespeare. The proof is in the pudding. Can we use these practices? Are they actually useful in our life? Not just when we're in the sort of spiritual realm, which is really important, but also in our day-to-day life. And just think, if we were grounded, we felt grounded each day when we get up. We feel like, okay, whatever comes toward me this day, I'm not going to let it just knock me out of my center. I'm going to remain centered. And I may have to think about it. I may have to work with it. I may have to go through some emotions with it. But I have some tools that I can now use. So when I get that cancer, that big word from the doctor, you have cancer, instead of just going into full-blown terror, you think, well, okay, so I have some tools that I can use even with this. Or just like I was hoping for a sunny day and it's cold and rainy today. And some people get totally knocked off their center from that. So how can I be more receptive rather than be reactive?
Thank you for sharing that. Of course, your book, Returning to the Source, has so many great meditations. How can someone discover which meditation practice best fits them?
Well, like I said, they can look through the book. I teach classes. I teach 3 Zoom classes a week. In my book at the end has my website, and I have all kinds of classes and things there that people can look up. And, I do Qi coaching, private sessions with people. Like, what are you dealing with your life? What kind of practice would work, especially for you where you are right now? Things like that I help people with. So, as I said, I've been studying this a long time and I've applied it to my life, and I've learned so much from these great teachers that I've had in China and US that I love to pass this on to others.
So, how can cultivating inner stillness improve our relationships with others?
Yes, I have a whole other book about that I worked with a company called Sounds True. But it's part of that thing I just mentioned about how can you be more of a receptive person than a reactive person. Somebody says something that kind of ticks you off or goes right into some issues you've had since you were a child, and you immediately get defensive and reactive and blaming the other person, and it's all you. If you can take a breath or two and just think about, okay, what's my part in this? I don't have to, this person is not attacking. I can view this as an attack, or I can view this as an opportunity to look at maybe the way I am living my life, the way I am communicating with other people can tick them off or hit them in a place that they're very reactive. And we can both be reactive and both argue, But if even one person doesn't go into reactivity immediately, if both people cannot be reactive, then there's no end to the healing that can happen.
Oh my gosh, that would be such a big deal then, because we could take a moment and be still and not get into a place where we get so emotional that we're not in control of our emotions.
And then we're yelling back at them, and then they're yelling back at us. But if we can drop that and just own what's real, and it may be that other person is being unfair, but it doesn't mean we don't have to bring up our shields and spears right away to protect ourselves.
Is there one Taoist principle you believe that can make the greatest difference if more people practiced it daily?
Yes, I think this one that I've mentioned a number of times, which is my favorite, Wu-Wei, W-U-W-E-I, and you can learn more about that in the book. But that idea that we don't eat to 110% of being full instead of like 80%, which helps our digestion. We don't overreact to the world. We don't overextend, overdo, try to force something. It's not happening the way we want it. I'm going to force it, and I'm using all my energy to do this, and I'm going to get really stressed out about doing this, of just living a life of ease. And a life with following the watercourse way, being authentic in our expressions, and even authentic to ourselves, to the kind of life that we would love to have. And sometimes it takes a number of steps to get there. Just using those three principles, we can just live a life of ease and what one ancient Taoist, Zhuangzi, called living a life of free and easy wandering, called Xiao Yao Yo. And recently I learned that the Xiao Yao Yo, the yo at the end, can also mean play. So living our life with free and easy playing.
I love that. I think that's such a beautiful place to be. What would you like readers and our listeners to take away from your book?
Well, I'd like them to take away that they have some tools. I keep going back to being practical, but they're tools that can be very inspiring and even sometimes entertaining, and have these different tools that we can use in different situations in our life. And the more we do these kinds of deep meditative spiritual practices, we are able to experience ourselves as perhaps more than the world has told us we are. That there's one in here about experience yourself as enlarging your sense of self, bigger, 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 from the room to the house, to the town, to the country, to the planet, as experience ourselves as vast beings, and that there is a vast spiritual world, whether you're a Sufi, a Buddhist, Taoist, indigenous culture, that world, people have known about that world for thousands and thousands of years. And the more time we can spend in that world and fill ourselves with the teachings and lessons and wonderful, joyous experiences of that world, what the Taoists call Tao, what some people call Buddha, what some people call God, all the different ways that people express this, it's always the same. Source with a capital S. It's where we came from, where we're going, and we have a direct connection to the source. And we just need a little help from some of these teachers that point us in the right direction. And whether it's meditation, prayer, qigong, singing, chanting, all these tools that people have used for thousands of years. So this is just one flavor. And it's not like you're only allowed to eat chocolate ice cream. You can try strawberry. You can have, pistachio. This is one flavor that works for me and works for a lot of other people. And of course, you don't have to become a Taoist religious person. It comes from the Taoist tradition, but the Taoist tradition goes way before the Taoist religion.
Where can our listeners go to connect with you and learn more about your work and books?
Well, my website is www. And then it's abode, like home, ABODE, and Tao spelled with a TAO.com. And I'm on Facebook. I teach on Zoom, which is, like I mentioned, I call Cyber Tao. And it started during COVID. A little before COVID, I learned how to do it. And then COVID, we're still able to connect, like you and I are connecting right now. And so you can see in all my classes, my books, my music, my coaching stuff. It's all on there. So I love to hear from people. I would love to hear from people. My email is Solala, my name, and then the same as the website, abodedao.com. Tao spelled with a T. And I would love to hear from people like, oh, I tried this one and it was great. It worked perfectly. Or I tried this one and I couldn't really connect with that one. This one seems to work better. Or I'm not sure I'm really understanding this one. Could you give me a little help with this? So I definitely, any readers, I would love to hear from you.
Well, Solala, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that we were able to do it. I really appreciate your wonderful, wonderful insights and questions. It's been a delight to spend this time with you.
Well, thank you, Solala. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Returning to the Source, Daoist Meditations for Rediscovering the Sacred in Everyday Life. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.